Welcome everyone back to the Pommy and Oz channel, and a new little thing for you guys and girls. I'm going to get some content creators who know their clubs better than me to discuss the things that are relevant, and I'm joined by the great man himself. I've got Deebs, or David as he was birth named, from the True Bloods Footy podcast. He's a massive Swans man. Welcome to the show, mate. How are you doing?
G'day, Pommy. Yeah, great to be on, mate. Yeah, don't go with David too often. I feel like I'm in trouble. But yeah, look, thanks for having us on, mate. It's been a busy couple of days to be a Swanee supporter, to be honest.
It has, yeah. I mean, I put my emergency flare out for a Sydney man, and we've got a great mutual friend, Marnie. Marnie was saying, if I want to know anything about Sydney, you are the main man. So, highly recommended. I'm super excited about this because obviously this is probably the biggest news story of the off season, and it makes a change because it's not a scandal. It usually is a scandal pre-Christmas. This is something quite emotional. So, your initial thoughts, was it a surprise to you? Were you expecting it? How did it go down? How were you feeling about it?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the biggest surprise was a double spread page in the Herald Sun today. And I was like, geez, the Swannies must be doing something right to get some coverage down here in Melbourne. But yeah, look, it's been on the agenda the last couple of years. You knew Horse had been, one of the longest tenures in the AFL, and it's sort of been brought up, especially with his last contract, that was signed, at the end of 14, or no, sorry, not 14. It would have been before the 22 season, I would say, when he signed that 2-year extension. You were sort of thinking, is this the last one? And sort of the losing grand finals and all these type of things. It was always in the back of our mind. And then especially this year, when Dean Cox didn't end up going to Western Australia, when there was a coaching position there, you knew the succession plan was there without them saying it. So look, you want to say I'm not shocked, but I was surprised. But yeah, it's a bit of how can I put it? It's like the last stage of grieving nearly as well. After getting pumped in a grand final, you're angry, you're depressed, and then you sort of start to come out of it. And with Horse moving on, as sad as it is and how much he's done for the club, having that new breath, it's nearly a new lease on life for us Sydney supporters after suffering a couple big grand final losses.
It's funny you say that. We say new lease of life, because when we did our off-season Sydney review, the big thing that I was expecting you to be audacious in the trade period or the draft, something to change, because I know probably one of the legacies of Horse, which I think is unjustified. He's had 5 finals, lost 4, won 1. I think the most incredible thing about Horse is 14 years to only 2 seasons he's not played finals. And I think people forget when Ruse left, you guys were on the ascendancy. He bailed you out. There was a lot of pressure and he delivered very soon. I think Horse has been sustained, but this is kind of that catastrophic change. I was always worried. We seen Adelaide years ago. They did that famous power stance and they backed the list in and then they've never recovered. This seems like the best kind of change without doing micro in the list. Do you expect Dean Cox to do a lot? He has come out and said he's going to tinker. Do you think there's going to be a change of game style, or do you think it's just going to be more of a fresh energy?
Yeah, look, I think our improvement, it obviously comes from within. And look, when you're looking from the outside of the Sydney Swans and you don't cover them as deep as we do, I think you would have been in a different world if you thought we were going to make drastic change in this off season. Retention was the word that was used from the club all year. We were trying to retain players. We signed up all the 5 key players we needed to last year, including like an Errol Goulden, a Rowe Bottom, then you got your Haywoods and all these guys who re-signed. So when you put +1 +1, you get 2, right? There's not that much room in the salary cap to go chase a big name, or we did that the previous year, getting Grundy, James Jordan, these type of guys who have improved the the list and filled up those spaces that we need to. It's not going to be drastic change, but I think it's definitely game plan change, which you will see under Dean Cox. It's I think we've got away from the Bloods ethos a little bit. Obviously, you growing up knowing the Swans in the last 15 years, it's always been about contested footy and in and under, never give up type attitude, where we've sort of turned into this really classy ball movement side, which, isn't in our mantra, I would say. But I think that we need a little bit more balance, when to go by foot and when just to grind out a win. And I think that's the type of change you'll see from Coxie. And, well, that's what we hope he's sort of going to implement.
It's funny you mentioned Cox. The succession plan is obvious now. I remember when Eagles, he was pretty much locked into the Eagles. I think that was the general consensus. It makes sense, doesn't it? Premiership hero coming home. And then it kind of just died really quickly. It was like he's going to do the job and then suddenly he's not going to do the job. Obviously, this isn't something that's been thought about overnight. And we saw the incredible success you guys had with Ruse to Horse. And at the time, from my memory, Horse was linked to just about every job. Every time someone was sacked, Ruse was like, this guy's going to take over, but he was always dangled that carrot. The ominous part of being a Carlton fan, I look at Sydney as the team who always play. Do you feel like history may repeat itself? Because I look at your list, and it was interesting when you said retention. I know in all my previews, I thought you may try and bring a top 10 player in. I thought maybe there should be some futures on offer. You were going to attack the draft, go that way. You've got the old guys, you've got the young guys, maybe just a fresh little bit of energy. Do you feel that this year and next year, you've got, in my opinion, the best list in the AFL? I look at your list and it's pretty complete. You must be quite bullish that this isn't the end. This is just the start of a potential dynasty.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You can look at it through two lenses. Everyone sort of, when you get smacked in a grand final, people think you're just going to fall off the cliff. But I think we've already bucked that trend. After 22, everyone said we were done. We had a really average start to 2023 as well, and then made finals somehow. And then, we went again in 24 and we were probably the best side in it for majority of the year. I'm full of confidence. I think there's a new way of thinking, I think, with these young kids playing in today's game. I don't think the scarring is there as bad as it is with our generation. I'm 32, guys older than me, they really take the scarring to effect, and they linger on that pain, where I think that it's a little bit of water off a duck's back. You've got no choice but to saddle up and go again. They've got the best jobs in the world. I don't just think that the talent's going to fall away and they're not going to try and win a flag. And yeah, I think with some tinkers in our game plan and some players coming up through the twos and opportunity, I don't think there's any reason why we can't go again.
And you touched on the Bloods culture, it did hit home. When I first came to this country, you were a hard-edged side, like what I like to call working class, rugged. And it was interesting that in the last maybe 2-3 years, bringing in players like Warner and players like that, you're probably the pinnacle now of sexy football. It is beautiful to watch. And in the regular season, it looked like you were unbeatable at times. It was so good to watch. Do you feel like, because my team, Carlton, we're probably accused of being too workmanlike, and we're trying to add that sex appeal to our game. Do you think sometimes it's quite hard to bring it back? Because I agree with you. I feel like you need a bit of a balance. And at times it felt like when teams didn't want to let you play sexy and make it tough, you kind of looked a little bit more vulnerable than when all the other teams play free-flowing football. Do you think Coxie can bring that back quite a bit? Because he was a hard player, wasn't he? He was basics, repeat, second efforts. Do you think we're going to see a big show of that with him under the realm?
Yeah, I really hope so, Pommy. I really do, because we saw at times this year that we could just blow away a team in 10, 15 minutes of footy, and we would smack 5 or 6 goals on, and then it's game over, or we've got ourselves back in the game. And it's we always talk about a bit of plan B and this type of stuff, and just being able to control the narrative a little bit more and not let teams get a run on or these slow starts that we saw this year. I think that's going to be Coxie's first priority, is getting a bit more contested game. You might see a player like Taylor Adams come in and play a bit of a role, which we probably thought we were going to see last year. But I think with just how well we started, we probably got stuck in the ways of seeing that success. So we stuck with it a little bit. And, when the problem with playing sexy footy is when the shit hits the fan, it looks shocking and you just cannot get your game going. And that's what we ultimately saw a grand final day. When the pressure's at its highest, it's really hard to play sexy footy, and you need to be able to grind out the wins and win that contested ball. And yeah, look, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in Coxie's room when he's having the meetings throughout the preseason to how they're going to go about it this year. But yeah, I really hope they can find the balance between the sexy footy by foot and then, just grinding out wins in the middle as well.
Yeah, I did want to touch on that because I remember round 10. I remember it so vividly because my Blue Boys were flying. We were flying. It was 1 versus 2. And I remember saying it was like Manny Pacquiao versus Floyd Mayweather. It was 2 polar opposite styles. It was Carlton's grit, determination versus Sydney's free-flowing football. And I kept saying something's got to give. And what annoyed me when I watched Sydney play against Carlton was it was how much fun you guys had. And I said that's the difference between Carlton and Sydney. I remember there was this passage of play, Chad Warner chased Blake Acres and spoiled it out. And everyone got around him. They were roughly, it was like he kicked a goal. And I was like, that is huge. There was an element of love. You could see you were enjoying playing football. And ultimately you destroyed us. But then my wife's team, St Kilda, I watched round 17 and I think I'd guaranteed you guys winning the flag at this point. And it looked like you were hating it. Like Ross had stagnated you, made it hard. And it felt like something's changed. And an image sticks out to me, grand final parade. Horse and your players looked a little bit exasperated. There seemed to be a bit of tension and it'd gone from fun to pressure. Do you think that was maybe like the pressure of the situation? Was that you'd been found out? What did you feel that was? Because there was a massive shift in like the attitude, it felt like, from a neutral, from where you guys had that energy to it felt like it became hard work.
Yeah, it's an interesting point that I probably haven't considered too much post-grand final, if I'm being honest. But you're probably right. I think it's just the pressure of, losing the grand final 2 years earlier as well, and just sort of having that lull that we did in the season. I think we just got some growing to do as well. And it's probably, back from rounds 0 through to 14, you're probably having a little bit too fun, and I think too much fun. And our footy was good, but I don't think it was great. It was inconsistent, and we were a powerful footy side. We blew you away in 10 minutes. We found a way to get the 4 points. Then we started to get found out a little bit. And at the end of the day, I think when you lose a game by 120 points against Port Adelaide, that's not a premiership side. And I think that really took a bit of a real hit to the egos. And there's a few egos in our side, and they thrive off this stuff. And when you think you're going better than you actually are, you can get found out. And I think that's ultimately what happened. But we did show some resilience. We found a way to win against GWS. And then you talk about losing by 120 points to Port Adelaide. 6 weeks later, we're beating them in a prelim pretty easy. So that these guys have the resilience in them. But I think at the end of the day, that there was just that we got to equalise, that good footy to you just being able to grind out wins, and that contested footy wins grand finals. So like at the end of the day, that's what happens, I think, and we've got to find that balance better.
I remember the Port Adelaide game. It was I was watching that with a couple of beers, and I don't believe in luck, but that was one of them games, that Port game, that first game you lost, where everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The 50%ers where the ball bounces one way, where the miskicked pass hits a pigeon and drops into a full forward's lap wasn't happening. That was a real culture shock. And I love the fact you said when you played them again, though, you could see that there was no demons there. Like that would have made a weak team usually buckle, because we always talk about it, don't we? Oh, we played them in the regular season, we destroyed them, we're fine here. Yeah. You have got that. Do you think there is a grand final stigma with your team? And would you say that that's attached to Horse himself? Or do you think it's to the club? Because I find Australian sport magical. There's so much superstition. I hear about Carlton curses and things like that. I don't buy into it. Do you feel like that with Horse going? Is that like a mental relief for the players in the terms of new coach, new slate?
I think there's an aspect of it. I'm not a big one for superstitions and that type of thing, but you talk about like Horse, and announcing his retirement on Tuesday. It's nearly like, as I said, like the last stage of grieving, like post a grand final. It's sort of Horse has done everything. He's had 4 cracks at getting this side over to a grand final and win a premiership in a row, and hasn't been able to do it. I'm sure they've tried different things. You even look at the inner sanctum. You've got the best sports psychologist, Emma Murray, in the rooms at halftime, and she hasn't been able to turn the boys around. I do think it's between the ears to an aspect of when they got to the grand final within game, but you've just got to try and go again. It's simple as that, and I think they've got that in them too. As I've already said, we bucked the trend and made another grand final after 22, and you've just got to pray that Cogsy coming in. A few different changes within the side, a few little tweaks here. I think the nucleus is there, but it's hopefully Cogsy can be, the sugar on top to the Swannies going all the way.
And from the outside looking in, I always think Brodie Grundy was such a key acquisition. And we saw glimpses last year of old Brodie Grundy dominating, having touches, looking involved. And every time we have a new coach at a new club, Carlton, trust me, I've been here. We seem to have a new coach every 2 years. Yeah. There always seems to be a player that disappointed you in the old establishment that suddenly finds his gear. Do you think he's going to have a massive effect on Brodie Grundy's game? Because you'd say Cox was the prototype before Grundy became a thing. And who is the players that you think are going to thrive having a change of scenery? Is there someone you're getting your eye out and saying he's going to have a big 25?
Yeah, I'm looking to Taylor Adams. He's probably the one I really look at, and I'm like, if he can fire up and get into the fold of what Luke Parker's done for us over the years. He's obviously going to be spending a fair bit of time forward, sort of got to find that goal kicking ability that Parker had a little bit more, and also getting that chance to crack in the middle and use his contested game. We know he's not a bullet by foot, and just play to your strengths. I think he's a see ball, get ball guy, and I'm hoping he gets that opportunity under Cogsy. And you talk of a player like Brodie Grundy. I think Cogsy would have had the effect on him last year, but I think the man management of Brodie Grundy is huge. I think all Sydney supporters said last year that when it got to that round 16, round 17 time where 3 games clear, it's like, give Brodie Grundy a rest in here. Because he started like a house on fire, tore Max Gawn up at the SCG in opening round, and then we probably didn't see a dominating game like that for a long time. He had some good games, but just not that dominating player that Brodie Grundy can be. But yeah, hopefully they get his management a little bit better this year. He's going to be 32 or around that mark. And I think Cogsy, being the ruckman, that they would be waxing ideas off each other all the time. But yeah, you hope, that a couple of our recruits from last year can really fire up and have a big impact.
And what are you looking for 2025? New coach. You'd say the pressure now has kind of been pulled away with a new coach. I always think they get that 12-month berth. What are you looking at, though? We do this video this time next year. What's your past score? What do you think's the minimum expectation for the Swans?
Yeah, it's a funny question. You hear it getting asked in the media all the time, and you're like, you're kidding yourself saying that. Like, I think anything less than finals is an absolute disaster. And if you look at the facts on paper, which I love to do, and I think we're one of the, as you say, we've got one of the best lists in it. And if we execute like we can, like nothing short of a flag's going to sustain what us Blood supporters want after the disappointment of losing grand finals. But I think if you get a top 4 finish, it's hard every year to finish top 4, and a lot has to go right. Keeping players on health is wealth, isn't it? It's all about keeping a healthy list. And nearly the biggest thing I want to see is peaking at the right time. We saw it with Brisbane this year, struggling start of the year. Can they ever make finals, to winning a flag? It's try and peak in September. There's no premierships are won in May, June, or July, even August. It's all about peaking in September.
Mate, I wish you luck, because honestly, Sydney, like I say, they are the Barcelona of the noughties, aren't they? They've got that game plan, which seems to be the benchmark for all the other clubs. Like, the AFL is a copycat league, and some great players. Before I let you go, though, Chad Warner, is he staying, or do you think do you reckon Cogsy can keep him? Western Australian legend, do you think he can keep him, or do you think the cries of the Western clubs are going to be too loud?
Yeah, I don't know if it would be the cries of the Western Australian clubs, but the $1.5 million a season might get him across the line, across the Nullarbor there. But it's an interesting one. Chad's one of the few players who we've really sort of developed a relationship with on the podcast, and his family and everything. They're a great family. It's a really tough one. You hope he stays. You listen to the stuff in the media, sounds like he's going. It's like playing golf with, who was it? It was Pikey and Kieran Jack. It's like, oh, gee, well, we're no shot at keeping him, are we? But look, time will tell. Fingers crossed he stays, but the dollars might be too much at the end of the day, and it's hard to begrudge someone. It's a business at the end of the day, and it's a limited time they have in this game. So fingers crossed he stays, but we'll take Harley Reid and 2 first-rounders in return if he does go.
He'll be worth a pretty penny. Will Chad Warner? Absolutely destroyed my Blues. That 10-minute spell he had, like. We could have had 50 players on the field. We couldn't stop him when he gets going. But, Deebs, I've got all your details in the comment section. So, chat, if you are a Sydney fan, or if you want to do what I do, I like to sneak onto pods for previews to spy of what the opposition are doing. Make sure you go and check out. But great bunch of guys and girls who contribute to that channel. So, wonderful work they do. But, Deebs, mate, I hope this is the first time of many I get to chat to you, because you're a gentleman and a scholar. But best of luck to you in 2025. Hope to meet in the final.
Yeah, definitely, Pommy. Thanks for having us on, mate. And best of luck for your Blue Boys as well.
Cheers, mate.
I see her rolling up, Uber black Cadillac, high heel boots, and a sexy body full of tats. Baby's bad, oh baby's hella